Strategy, technology, demos, and stories from Adobe Consulting. This is the Experience Lab Podcast. Welcome back to the Experience Lab Podcast. I'm Chris Stolz. As always, this is where we talk strategy, data, and the future of the experience. Today is a really packed one. I'm joined by Jason Dausey and Michael Broom, both of which are enterprise architects at Adobe, and they're very deep in the trenches of helping companies navigate this rise of AI that we're in, particularly agentic AI. So today we're going to talk about what agents really are, how to think about data readiness, why it's not about replacing people, but compounding value. Look, if you're trying to make sense of AI strategy, governance, use case prioritization, all of those things, then this one is for you. All right, well, here we are. I got Jason and Michael with me. Why don't we say hi? Jason, I'll start with you. Why don't you introduce yourself? What do you do around here? And then Michael, kick it to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, no, thanks for having me. This is amazing. So right now I am an enterprise architect focusing in on AEM, Adobe Experience Manager, and AI. So it's been a whirlwind over the last year or two with AI being such a hot topic in this world.
All right, Mr. Broom, why don't you say hello?
Hi, long-time listener, first-time caller. So I'm an enterprise architect at Adobe. I'm very much focused on ensuring the customer's entire stack really works and connects with each other, and they can really fulfill all of their use cases. I've been very, very into the agentic AI side of things for the last year, especially, really understanding how customers want to use it, what they need to set up to be successful in their systems, and how they need to really evaluate their processes and how their people kind of think about it and everything else as well. So yeah, excited to be on today.
Awesome. And those of you listening for the first time, I'm Chris Stoltz. I like long walks on the beach, pina coladas, and getting caught in the rain. So, Jason, I'm going to start with you. Let's start by actually defining what an agent is. We keep talking about agents and agentic everywhere. Can you define that for everybody? And that will just help us all start from the same place.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the cool things that we look at, right, and one of the things have the pleasure of doing is helping customers define that. And oftentimes, you often hear agentic, and then you hear agents, right? And that's confusing for a lot of folks. And what I've always discussed with folks is agentic describes the process. It's an adjective, and it's a type of AI that can understand user intent, interpret goals, create plans, take action, and it's all either autonomously or self-autonomously. And based on those outcomes and learn over time, right? These are key elements of what an agentic kind of solution, an agentic workflow would look like. And then agents are the noun. They're the workers. They're the ones that are running around doing things. Maybe it's a specific use case. Maybe it's a specific data set that they're looking at. But it's really designed to augment that human capability. And it's really your always on coworker. And it's been really important to understand those differences from either even Gen AI because it's such a fast evolution that we're seeing in the industry right now. And agentic is the latest flavor, and honestly, in just my opinion, the one that's going to stick because it really does have a lot of bite. And it's no different even at Adobe, right? So a lot of the times that I've talked to customers is recently around agentic. We're launching a ton of new agentic capabilities across our stacks, whether it's CDP, AJO, AEM, and it's bringing the worlds closer together because now with these agents, right? So there's superpowered coworkers that are sitting at your side that you can execute multi steps and multi practice and multi data dependent actions across all of Adobe. And this is just Adobe. I, s- if you're talking about any other software capability or even internal capabilities at most organizations, they're launching this very similar capabilities internally. So it's a really exciting time to be in this spot because it does open up a whole lot of new capabilities for users to get hands on some new technology, but also for businesses to achieve things that they couldn't achieve before.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I often think of it as being like an employee with multiple arms, like the ultimate multitask employee that you can hire, and it connects into all the things that you need to do on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I like to think about with agentic AI, especially across every industry right now, it is the hottest topic you can possibly think of, right? It's really going to be a massive change for how companies and how people really go about their day-to-day lives at work. It's very much transformative disruption, right? So like it's going to be a structural change. It's going to really very much redefine the operating model at companies and how they are getting their jobs done. And one thing I like to really think about with agentic AI especially is yes, it's a new technology, right? But it's not a 0 to 1, right? It's not a net new capability like a foundational invention where nothing really existed. I like to think about it as more of a 1 to n, which means it's really compounding value atop existing systems. So all of the existing workflows, the kind of use cases, the jobs being done are really going to be just accelerated. There's going to be reductions in latency. You'll be able to extend your reach and you'll be able to really kind of connect all of these different systems together with agentic AI. And it's not really a completely like a labor replacement. The hands on keyboard folks will now be more controllers of this kind of more accelerated way to do things. It won't be completely just a replacement of everything. So there's a different way to think about this. And I think a lot of folks just need to kind of readjust their mindset and how they really focus on these things.
Yeah, and one of the things and that mindset shift is one that I talk to customers quite a bit about because it's not just a shift in looking at the value stream, but it's also a shift in mindset of how you look at AI and how you look at how it talks to data, right? Because data in general is a strategic resource, but most people don't look at like data as a strategic resource, and it makes it even more important for AI to have that shift of mindset, not just from a value chain perspective, but also a data perspective, because AI is only as good as the data that fuels it, right? So poor data quality equals poor model performance, and that becomes really really important because if you could kind of recall what I was talking about earlier, which is agentic helps us perceive and reason and decide if that decision reliability becomes uh, problematic, right? So if even with the smallest bit of data, it could send wrong triggers, lead to bad personalization, unauthorized recommendations because it's all based on data. AI is smart, and I think to Michael, to your point, it's not it's not a replacement for human creativity. It's not a replacement for human interaction. It's there to augment. But if the human, right, is getting the wrong data, the AI is not going to know that, right? So the point of a lot of what I've been talking to customers about is I think everybody knows what technical debt is, but data debt is another big topic. Legacy silos, inconsistent taxonomies, unstructured data, like all of this is a big deal with the rise of AI and agentic AI.
Well, and one of the things about, living in a world where we're doing aggregate either analytics or segmentation, right? We're looking at tons and tons and tons of customers all at the same time. What pages of checkout are people dropping off at? That aggregate form of measurement or activation has a little bit less risk because if you've got some bad data for a couple of those visits, it's not really going to make a giant difference. As we get down to more one-to-one personalization in today's world, that becomes more of a risk because the 5 or 6 events for me as an individual customer need to be right for me to make that decision. When you bring in agentic, you bring in scale. And so now you take what could be a problem at the one-to-one level and you scale it up across millions of customers for larger companies, that emphasizes that need even more for that data to just be bang on. And so data integrity, it really is going to be at the forefront of this thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And think of the last interaction you had with a major brand, right? Like whatever that may be. And if they've gotten your name wrong, or if they showed you an ad or a past purchase that you didn't make, not only it puts two things at risk. One, it puts the trust that you have in that brand at risk, but it makes you feel that it's impersonal, right? Like you miss that customer, and that's a huge deal. To your point, at the level of scale, right? So if it's just one person, that could happen. But if you have bad data that's leading to personalization at a autonomous level, that could be very problematic.
So the shift I think that we're seeing now is that it used to be all about the content, and then it became a little bit about the data. Now, especially as people are asking the question, what do I need to do to be agent ready or AI ready? It's about getting your data backbone in place. It's about having your data available and accurate and real time where appropriate, and then the ability to pump that into your solution, whether it's AEP or some other CDP that you have.
Yeah, AI readiness does not equal AI maturity by any means, but that is the baseline, and it's the groundwork from scaling AI pilots, making them into production workloads. And when you start to think about how you make a production workload, it's breaking down the silos to your point earlier, where the modern data stack, where companies and organizations have potentially multiple data lakes, lake houses, semantic data layers across the board, and then having the ability to have more of a mock architecture where APIs and interoperability allows for those connectivity pieces, those worlds become really close together. So what do we have to do as a part of making sure that the data is in good order? It actually spans in multiple different things, and I don't think any of them is new. But we've always talked about data profiling that leads to data quality, and then thinking about what does the accuracy look like, what does the completeness look like, consistency, uniqueness, all of the things that we talk. At least I've talked to customers about for the last 5 years. It doesn't change here. It just makes it more of an important. It puts an exclamation point at the end. I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts?
I
There-
completely agree. And what this is really doing is it's really just amplifying the need to have that, like accurate foundational data all set up and ready to go. For years, especially with AEP, like we always preach, you have to have these correct data models, you have to have accurate data, or else when you build audiences and activate it, it could be incorrect, right? AI in the rise of agentic is really just going to magnify that and amplify it. And sure, like you really have to have all this correct. You have to have it right. And there has to be more consistent governance on a schedule to make sure everything is correct and everything is right. Because like you said, once you start scaling this out using agentic and AI, the errors and the inaccuracies are then just magnified and amplified, right? So I don't know, Chris, what are your thoughts? I know you have a lot of experience with this as well.
Yeah, a couple things. The thing that makes me feel better is that we have AI at a commercial level now to be able to help check on that accuracy. And so we've got obviously some AI and tools like CJA in the Adobe world and a lot more things coming. But it does help me sleep a little bit better knowing that AI is checking on how well AI did. But it kind of brings back that old use case of progressive profiling, right? LinkedIn used to do this really well of every time you logged in, hey, make sure these are your skills. Are you open to work? All those sorts of things. They're constantly trying to keep your profile up to date so that they can use that to give you a better experience. And I think now it's becoming even more important to do those progressive profiling type use cases because you're building that completeness. To your point about, profile completeness, Jason, it's if I've got 2 data points, the AI doesn't have a heck of a lot to base its decision on. But if I'm capturing a lot more in a lot more places, or at least capturing the things that are important in the places that matter, then I've got the right signals for that engine to be able to pick up and understand what that behavior is.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we're talking about profiles, and so data in general is ambiguous at best, right? So depending on who you talk to, data becomes a different thing to different individuals. But I think your point is spot on. It's the completeness of it, whether we're talking about metadata, data labeling, knowledge graphs, structured versus unstructured. Uh, it, the new things that are coming out that are becoming more of a presence is the feedback mechanism, right? So with AI, you can give a thumbs up, like the feedback mechanism, thumbs up, thumbs down. This is good. This is not good. Is that good, right? Like what? How does your AIs interpret that data to increase their and improve the data pipelines? And then here's a new one that I'm real bullish on is the active data. So how, like, we talk about freshness all the time, but when we start to talk about systems that will learn, right? So data systems will continuously learn and optimize themselves. How does your data strategy look at the future state of the active data that your models will learn from? So when we start talking about and thinking about data and the ambiguity of that data that topic brings along, you have to start thinking widely for AI. What connected systems, what data you're going to be looking at, and the completeness of that full picture versus just the individual picture.
Well, and a lot of that's gonna start from org and governance. Who within my organization owns this mandate? And then how do we govern its use and its accuracy within our organization?
Oh, Chris, you're getting me excited, brother. Yes,
Uh-oh, I opened something.
listen, I think a part of no matter whoever, all your listeners, right, as you're starting to evaluate AI as a capability, uh, observation, explainability is important because the back end of this is the data governance, like who owns it, what's the data stewardship, who is accountable for that. There's also components of this in terms of the privacy and regulations, like depending on what organization you're in. You have GDPR, you have HIPAA, you have data residency. Like all of those things are really, really important from a governance perspective. And then on top of that, you have a whole responsibility component here. Responsible AI is really based on responsible data. I have customers that are standing up whole new practices specifically around AI governance and responsibility and ethics because of that reason, right? And it becomes a multifaceted organizational governance board versus just an individual governance board for, I don't know, like if we're looking at profiles or content or journeys. This is bigger than that. And customers, I think even back to the earlier components of this is you have to start looking at data strategically. This is what that's a basis of this.
And the hard part of this is going to be speed, right? Is that time to market for data. I mean, historically, healthcare has been a little slow because of the regulatory nature of all their data. The whole HIPAA thing, what can I use, what can I not? It's got to go through several layers of approval, and that's good for me as a consumer or as a patient that my data is being protected and going through a lot of checks and balances, but at the same time it slows things down. And so one of the challenges I think I see for organizations is applying that level of governance, but trying to find a way to do it at scale. And I think as a market as a whole, I don't think that's something that people have really cracked yet, is how to go through those checks and balances in a way that it doesn't take 6 months to capture a click on a button on a website.
Yeah, and this is actually something I'm seeing across the board with the customers I work with is AI in general and the legal concerns and the approvals needed takes an extraordinary amount of time, right, to complete. Like I'm seeing customers who need at least 12 months minimum sometimes just to get AI agreed upon, right? To be able to utilize it within like Adobe services. And so, yeah, it's going to be something in the future that, maybe Jason, you have thoughts on this too, like where it's going to be more of a standard process and not this separate process, right? It's going to be something that's going to be layered since agentic essentially, I think, is going to be layered into most technology in the future. I feel like the legal and like the sign off and things like that will also have to be kind of layered into everything as well for AI specifically. But do you have any thoughts on like the governance piece of it, the legal piece of it?
Yeah, I don't think it's change. I don't think it changes the baseline though. I think it amplifies the message and the requirements to ensure that the governance and privacy is maintained. But I think that it just evolves from what should have been already done in the past, right? Because when you start to think about governance and you start to think about, yeah, even the regulatory industries, everyone wants to take advantage of the efficiencies gained and garnered by AI and Gen AI and agentic AI. That's just the nature of it. There's a lot of benefit, a lot of value there, but it's starting to show the cracks of organizations' poor data management requirements. My recommendations have been that I wouldn't necessarily focus so much on creating something new. I think Michael or Broom, to your earlier opinion, it's not a 1 to 0, but it's an evolution. Data readiness is not a one-time project. It's not something that we're going to be able to say, okay, tomorrow we are going to be data ready and we won't ever have to concentrate on this ever again. But being able to put in structure and governance at a higher level, at an executive level, to make sure that the teams are continuously doing what they should have been doing already. And I don't want to like come after people and say, hey, you had a bad data strategy, but now it makes it more important to more have a more focus on that. It's no longer just a tech problem, and now it's, hey, we have to invest in the governance, the architecture, and literacy before algorithms and tech.
And I have an episode on this that I did a couple episodes ago that I'll link to in the description below so everyone can go check that out. You can hear me rant and rave about what data and how much to put into your CDP ecosystem. I think one point I'd like to bring home on this is that at the end of the day, all of this AI stuff has to be for a reason. We're not just doing it for the sake of doing it as organizations. We're doing it for efficiencies. We're doing it for customer experience, which is for the sake of revenue, sales, loyalty, all those things. And I think it can be overwhelming to see all of these options and all of this technology. And the place that we need to start is, what is the business case for doing this at all? What are the use cases or experiences that I want to drive? Then start making decisions about how I'm going to use agents or AI technology as a whole to be able to power it. Because without activation or without getting something out of it as a business, we're just clicking on stuff because it's cool.
Yeah, and I liken a lot of the this agentic AI and AI overall kind of buzz back to like when I first started in like my kind of whole career, it was very much on paid social, right? So think back to the days of Facebook, Twitter, and every company thought they had to be on Facebook, they had to be on Twitter, right? Many times when I first started working in my agency out of college, it was I have to be on Facebook because I heard I have to, right? My granddaughter said I have to be on Facebook, and I'm like, what is your main focus, right? Like, what is your goal? Like, what do you hope to achieve there? And they didn't know. They just know they had to be there. And I think what you're saying, Chris, kind of goes. It's like that with agentic right now as well, and AI in general. Is that people just assume they have to have it, but they're many times not focused on what is this really going to do for me, right? Is it going to automate? Is it going to augment? Right? And think about like maybe the overall ROI as well. I think those are some key points to really take in when they're focusing on this.
At risk
Go
of
ahead.
sounding like an infomercial, which is why Adobe's AI and agentic strategy is what it is, right? It's
Mhm.
all purpose built into the tools and the things that we know that people are doing. You go look at the Firefly capability within Photoshop, it's there as part of the workflow to be used. So there's my commercial there.
That's a good point though, Chris. And the just because it's like Adobe is purposely built, a lot of customers have had that one Gen AI thing that they put into production that one time, and it was used for that one cool thing that they did, but it was never was impactful. And I think to the point that you both are making is that your use case and the definition has to be there, and oftentimes that's not a big one. Like it's surprising some of the AI technologies that I'm working with are fairly simplistic, but it has big power because it helps the day-to-day worker get their things done faster, right? So it's whether it's making reports or very quickly summarizing an email. These are simplistic use cases. These aren't like transformational use cases. And I think oftentimes where people get a little misaligned is that they try to go big too far, right? And having just the simplicity of it makes it a lot easier to do the things, especially on the data side as well. Because if you're talking about data, it's data quality, data integration, unification, permissions, governance, and then organizational readiness. And if you look at those four pillars, it's a lot easier to control that at a smaller use case. Just in Adobe, I think back to Chris to your infomercial, some of the most popular, like even the visuals, it's masking. It's taking the background out of an image. You could have AI do that. No one wanted to do that anyways, right? So it takes something that's tedious, arduous, and time consuming and makes it easy and enjoyable. And I think that's really where a lot of the agentic and AIs kind of goes off kilter. It's trying to do too much for too many things.
Yeah, I mean, I often say this to customers, pick something really, really simple and do it incredibly well. Try to do the simple thing better than anybody else does it. And you will achieve more value that way than trying to build a 87-step customer journey, because you get cleaner learnings, right? Better data, better information, et cetera, out of something simple that you can iterate on faster than something big and complex. Take your abandoned cart and, to quote Steve Martin, be so good they can't ignore you.
I think with any kind of newish technology, right, and with agentic AI right now is people are trying to think a little too big, too fast. What agentic AI really does is it really just changes how quickly and intelligently you can do your tasks that you're already doing, right? So if we think about Adobe, we think about building audiences, crafting journeys, right? Like building content, like the work itself really doesn't change. Like you're still going to be doing this stuff, but you're going to be doing it faster. Okay. So when you're thinking about like, how do I really start to inject agentic AI into our processes, into what our kind of people are doing, it's really it's stuff you're already doing, but just doing it faster, quicker, more intelligently at scale, things like that. I always go back to this because people are just trying to go to the moon too fast, right? Let's first just go on a road trip. Okay. Let's just figure this out.
Yeah, it's the trough of disillusionment. We're especially in the agentic side, we're kind of getting into that the 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 peak of hype where everything can be solved by agentic, and we've all heard it. I think there's no lack of stories that we can tell where agentic was the thing that solved all the problems. But Michael, to your front point that made earlier, AI is not going to do something you can't already do. And in the case that I've seen in the Adobe world, is they're simplistic questions. Create a journey with this audience and make sure that you're touching and talking to them on this schedule, right? It's simple. But now when we start to look at the folks that are touching it, it's changing the practitioner's data readiness and thought process. So where your persons in the past might have been 4 or 5 people that were domain level experts in whatever that thing is, whether it's creating, in the case of Adobe, journeys, or creating segments and audiences, or creating content. Now you're opening the door for practitioners that are maybe don't have as deep a domain expertise that they normally had. So being able to have that, and kind of going back full circle, the good data does to have the explainability of, here's what I think you like. The AI is going to say, hey, I think this is what I heard you say, that reasoning, but also having that human in the loop, to be able to generate the next step. And simple use cases equate to simpler explainability, simpler training, simpler upskilling, and then I think ultimately, like even just earlier, simple data management.
Well, I think if these guys are saying anything, it's keep it simple, people. So I think we're going to wrap it there for today. Jason, Michael, thanks for having you guys on. You guys are amazing. Michael, I'm going to start with you. Any final words?
Yeah, I think my closing thoughts here are pretty simplistic, right? So agentic AI really doesn't replace your foundation, right? It amplifies it. When your data is unified, it's governed, it's actionable. It doesn't invent new work. It really just multiplies the impact across every function. And like I said at the very beginning, right? This is the one to end transformation. Okay. So it's really compounding that value on your existing systems, and you're really extending the intelligence into like every process, not creating it from nothing. So yeah, thanks for having me, Chris.
I mean, again, I have a super crazy passion of AI. So if AI is the engine, data is the fuel, but ask yourselves, are we refining enough to go the distance? And if the answer is no, that is where you want to start. So from the adoption realm, think through that and start where you stand. Don't try to follow everybody's, don't go to everybody's website and think that, oh, I have to have this very specialized and crazy procedure. Start where you stand, and go from there, because you'll quickly realize you're probably a little further than you think you are, but you still have some refinement to go through.
Well, and I'll just add to that as my final point here. Start with the thing that you can measure. Because if you're going to a competitor's website and looking at what they're doing, you're making an assumption that it works. But unless you can see their data and see their analytics, you have no clue. So start where you stand with what you can measure. And there we have it. So what did we learn? Well, I think what we learned is that AI doesn't replace the work, it amplifies it. Agents don't invent new ideas on their own, right? They accelerate the ones that we already have. So if you're trying to be AI ready, what I want you to try to do is not start by asking what the tech can do, but start by asking what your business actually needs or needs more of in terms of scale and velocity. Start where you stand, use what you can measure, and build the foundations, because ultimately the quality of your data will define the value of your AI. Look, thanks again, Michael, Jason, for joining me. This has been Chris Stolz. I will see you next time on the Experience Lab podcast. This has been the Adobe Experience Lab podcast.